Did Elvis really have to come back from anything? Wasn't he the biggest star in the world? And why did a TV special in 1968 matter so much? People thought they knew Elvis. They saw the movies. They heard the silly songs. But did they know he hadn't played for a live audience in 7 years? Did they know his manager wanted him to sing Christmas carols for an entire hour on national television? The story behind the songs of this one television show is the story of an artist fighting for his soul. It's about what happens when a king reclaims his throne, not with an army, but with a guitar and his voice. Number 24, why was the final song almost a Christmas carol? The show was supposed to end with I'll Be Home for Christmas. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, had already promised it to the sponsor, the Singer Sewing Machine Company. Elvis would wear a tuxedo. He would stand beside a Christmas tree. It was a safe, family-friendly, and completely boring idea. It was a done deal. But 1968 was not a safe year. The country was in turmoil. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated in April. Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated in June. The same month, Elvis was rehearsing for this show. The air was thick with anger and grief. A Christmas Carol felt wrong. It felt like a lie. The show's director, Steve Binder, knew this. He felt the tension. He and the musical director, Billy Goldenberg, wanted a song that said something about the times. They wanted a song with a message of hope, something that addressed the pain people were feeling. The Colonel's answer was always no. The deal was made. The sponsor expected a Christmas song, but Binder saw something in Elvis during rehearsals. He saw a man who was smart, aware, and deeply troubled by what was happening in his country. He wasn't the hollow movie star from Clambake. He was a man with a conscience. One evening, Binder and the show's vocal arranger, W. Earl Brown, were talking to Elvis about the assassinations. Elvis spoke with passion. He talked about his own poverty as a child. He talked about how he believed in the promise of people getting along, of finding common ground. He said things like, "I'm not a politician, but I know we need to find a better way." Earl Brown was so moved by the conversation that he went home and couldn't sleep. The words Elvis had spoken swirled in his head. In a single night, he channeled that conversation into a song. He wrote, "If I Can Dream." The next day, he played it for Binder. Binder knew instantly this was the song. This was the show's ending. The problem was convincing Elvis, and even harder, the Colonel. Binder brought the song to Elvis. And Elvis listened. He was hesitant at first. It wasn't his usual style. It was a big dramatic ballad with a powerful social message. He'd never done anything like it, but the words resonated with him. They were his own feelings put to music. He finally said, "Okay, I'll do it." It was a huge moment. Elvis was choosing art over commerce. He was choosing to say something real. Then came the battle with the Colonel. Parker heard the song and hated it. "That's not an Elvis song," he barked. He reminded Binder of the deal, the sponsor, the Christmas theme. He threatened to fire them all. Binder stood his ground. And he played his final card. He told the Colonel to let Elvis make the final decision. The Colonel, confident Elvis would stick to the safe plan, agreed. That was his mistake. Elvis had already been changed by the process of making this show. He had reconnected with his own power. He told the Colonel, "I'm doing the song." The recording session for If I Can Dream was legendary. Elvis wasn't just singing the words, he was living them. He poured every ounce of his frustration, his hope, and his soul into the microphone. The session's producer, Bones Howe, said he'd never seen anything like it. Elvis was on his knees, sweating, crying, screaming the lyrics. He did take after take, each one more intense than the last. He wasn't performing, he was testifying. The female backup singers, the Blossoms, were in tears watching him. This wasn't the movie Elvis. This was something else entirely. This was a man breaking free. When he finished the final take, the studio was silent. They knew they had just captured lightning in a bottle. The performance he filmed for the special, in a now iconic white suit, was just as raw. It was the last thing filmed for the show. He wasn't just singing a song, he was making a statement. He was proving he was more than a memory. He was a vital, relevant artist with a voice that mattered right then in the heart of 1968. And he did it by refusing to sing a Christmas carol. Number 23 was the black leather suit, A Happy Accident. The black leather suit is one of the most famous outfits in music history, but Elvis almost passed out wearing it. It wasn't designed for a performance under blazing hot television studio lights. The designer Bill Ballou created it to look good, to make Elvis look like a panther on the stage. He didn't fully account for the heat during the informal sit-down jam sessions, which were taped over 2 shows on June 27th, 1968. The temperature on stage was unbearable. The suit had no ventilation. It didn't breathe. It was literally cooking him. Between songs, you can see Elvis wiping sweat from his face. What you don't see is what was happening during the breaks. His throat was constricting from the heat and dehydration. Staff members would rush to him with ice water. They had to cool him down quickly before he went back on. He was drinking so much water that the leather, already tight, started to shrink and get even tighter. He later told people he felt like he was going to faint multiple times. The only thing that kept him going was the energy from the audience, the first real audience he had faced in over 7 years. He was feeding off their excitement, and it was pushing him through the physical ordeal. The suit itself was a 2-piece, custom-made outfit. It was designed to recall his rebellious image from the 1950s, the biker jackets and the tough guy look. It was a deliberate choice by director Steve Binder and Ballou to erase the image of the guy in the Hawaiian shirt from Blue Hawaii or the race car driver from Speedway. They wanted to bring back the dangerous Elvis. The plan worked. When he walked out in that suit, the audience gasped. He looked incredible. He was lean, mean, and ready to play. He had lost 25 pounds for the special, getting back to his fighting weight from the 50s. The suit accentuated every bit of that work, but the most important part of the suit wasn't the look, it was the effect it had on his performance. Being physically uncomfortable, being on the edge, pushed him. It added a layer of raw, primal energy to the music. When he sneers through Hound Dog or snarls his way through One Night, that's not just acting. That's a man physically battling his environment. He's fighting the heat, fighting the suit, fighting his own nerves. That struggle comes through in the music, making it feel more urgent and real than any studio recording. The decision to wear the suit for both sit-down shows had another consequence. When editing the show, the producers could seamlessly cut between the 6 p.m. and the 8 p.m. performances. Because he was wearing the exact same thing, they could pick the best vocal take for one line and the best guitar lick from another performance and splice them together. This gave them incredible flexibility to create the most powerful version of each song. The audience at home had no idea they were watching a composite of 2 different concerts. They just saw one perfect, electrifying performance. The suit that almost took him down became the key to making him look invincible. It was a symbol of his rebirth, a baptism by fire, both literally and figuratively. Number 22, why did his original bandmates look so nervous? When Elvis walked out for the sit-down portion of the show, he wasn't alone. Sitting beside him were 2 men who had been with him from the very beginning, Scotty Moore on guitar and DJ Fontana on drums. These were the guys who had played on Heartbreak Hotel and Jailhouse Rock. They were the architects of his original sound, but they hadn't played together in years. In fact, Scotty Moore hadn't even spoken to Elvis in a long time. There had been a falling out over money and management in the late 1950s. The reunion was not a sure thing. Scotty Moore was working as a recording engineer in Nashville. DJ Fontana was a session drummer. They were no longer rock and roll stars. When they got the call to do the special, they were hesitant. They didn't know what to expect. Would Elvis be the same guy they knew? Or would he be a Hollywood prima donna? The first rehearsal was awkward. Elvis was nervous. Scotty and DJ were nervous. They hadn't played these songs in a decade. It was like a high school reunion where you're not sure if you still have anything in common with your old friends. Director Steve Binder saw this nervousness and came up with a brilliant idea. He told them to forget the cameras. He set them up in a circle in Elvis's dressing room, just like the old days. He said, just hang out, talk, play some songs. I'm going to leave a microphone on in the corner. You know, for hours they just jammed. Elvis told stories about the early tours. Scotty remembered a funny incident on the road. DJ locked into a beat. They started playing old blues songs, gospel tunes, and their own hits. The walls came down. The awkwardness disappeared. They were a band again. That dressing room jam session is what convinced Binder that this informal, unscripted format was the way to go. It was the key to unlocking the real Elvis. On the night of the taping, that nervousness was still there, but it was mixed with excitement. You can see it on their faces. Scotty Moore in particular looks incredibly focused. He's not just strumming chords. He's watching Elvis's every move, anticipating every change. He had to relearn his own iconic guitar licks. During the years in Hollywood, Elvis had been backed by slick session musicians who played everything perfectly. Scotty and DJ were not perfect. They were raw. They were real. DJ wasn't even playing a full drum kit. He was just slapping on a guitar case, providing a simple, powerful backbeat. This rawness is what makes the performance so special. When Elvis launches into That's All Right, Scotty's guitar stings with the same energy it had in 1954 at Sun Records. When they tear through Blue Suede Shoes, DJ's beat is relentless. They were pushing Elvis, and he was pushing them. There's a moment where Elvis laughs and says, "I've been gone a long time." Scotty just smiles and plays a lick. It's a conversation without words. The reunion wasn't just for show, it was a musical homecoming. By bringing back Scotty and DJ, Elvis was reconnecting with his own musical roots. He was reminding himself and the world of where he came from. Their nervous energy wasn't a weakness, it was the spark that reignited the fire. Number 21 did A Song from a Bad Movie Save the Show. The opening of the special is unforgettable. It starts with a close-up of Elvis's face. He sneers and sings the opening line of the song Trouble. And then the camera pulls back and he's surrounded by dancers. The energy is electric. But the sequence that follows, built around the song Guitar Man, was a huge risk. It was a mini-movie within the show telling the story of a young musician's journey. And the song itself, Guitar Man, was not a classic hit. It was from one of his worst movies, Clambake, released just a year earlier in 1967. Using a recent unsuccessful song as the centerpiece of his big comeback was a bold choice. Most artists would have stuck with the guaranteed hits, but director Steve Binder loved the song. He felt its story, a young guitarist hitchhiking his way to fame, was the perfect metaphor for Elvis's own career and his journey back to the stage. It was a way to frame the entire special. The song was written by the legendary Jerry Reed, who also played the distinctive acoustic guitar part on the original recording. For the special, Elvis wanted that same sound. He wanted Jerry Reed. Reed was a successful country artist and session musician. When he got the call, he was hesitant. He told them he was busy with his own work. The producers were persistent. They finally convinced him to fly out to Los Angeles. When Reed walked in the studio, Elvis was ecstatic. He was a huge fan of Reed's guitar playing. Elvis didn't just want him to play on the track, he wanted him to teach the other musicians how to play it right. The original session players in LA couldn't capture the swampy finger-pick style that made the song unique. The recording session for the new version of Guitar Man was a turning point. Elvis was in his element, working with a musician he admired. He was engaged, giving ideas, and leading the band. This was not the bored movie star of the mid-60s. This was an artist taking control. The new arrangement was tougher, faster, and more aggressive than the movie version. It was the perfect engine for the show's opening production number. The number itself was complex. It involved multiple sets, costume changes, and choreography. It showed the guitar man getting discovered, achieving fame, and then getting trapped by it, culminating in a dramatic scene where he's surrounded by giant glittering letters spelling out Elvis. The message was clear. The name had become bigger than the man. The final shot of the sequence shows him breaking free, standing alone with his guitar, ready to play. The entire narrative of the comeback was told in that 5-minute segment, all powered by a song from a forgotten movie. By choosing Guitar Man, Elvis and Binder were making a statement. They weren't just replaying the past. They were reinterpreting it. They were taking a piece of his recent failed history and transforming it into something powerful and new. It was a way of saying, even in the worst of times, the music was still there. It was the perfect bridge from the Hollywood wilderness back to the concert stage. Number 20, how did a gospel song become a rock and roll explosion? In the middle of the special, there's a segment that starts in a church. Elvis is dressed in a burgundy suit, surrounded by a gospel choir, the Blossoms. He sings the soulful, heartfelt, "Where Could I Go?" but to the Lord. It's a beautiful, traditional performance. But then something amazing happens. The beat kicks in, the tempo doubles, Elvis rips off his jacket and launches into "Up Above My Head." The scene transforms from a church service into a full-blown rock and roll revival meeting. It's one of the most dynamic moments in the show. This gospel medley was not in the original plan. The show was already packed with hits, but Elvis insisted. And gospel music was his first love. It was the music he grew up with, the music he sang with his family. It was, in his words, the real stuff. He felt he couldn't do a show that represented his musical journey without including it. He had to fight for this segment. Colonel Parker and some of the network executives thought it would slow the show down. They worried that a religious segment would alienate some viewers. Elvis didn't care. He knew that the power and passion of gospel music were the foundation of his own style. The call and response, the emotional release, the driving rhythm, it was all there in his rock and roll. To prove it, he designed the medley to show that evolution. It starts with a hymn, moves to an up-tempo spiritual, and then explodes into Saved, a wild, almost frantic number written by Lieber and Stoller, the same duo who wrote Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock. The performance of Saved is breathtaking. The choreography is intense. Elvis is a dervish of energy, falling to his knees, interacting with the dancers, and singing with a fervor that borders on ecstatic. The dancers are dressed as saloon girls and gamblers, creating a deliberate contrast with religious lyrics. This was another one of Steve Binder's risky ideas. He wanted to create a scene that looked like a religious whorehouse, showing the conflict between the sacred and the profane that was always present in Elvis's music. The network censors were horrified. They wanted to cut the whole thing. Binder and Elvis fought to keep it in. They argued that it was a story about redemption, about a sinner being saved. They won, but just barely. What audiences saw was a man completely surrendering to the music. His vocals are raw and powerful. The backing vocals by the Blossoms, led by the incredible Darlene Love, are a force of nature. They weren't just singing backup. They were challenging him, pushing him to go higher. The energy between Elvis and the Blossoms is a key part of what makes the special so electric. This medley was more than just a musical interlude. It was Elvis's personal statement of faith and a history lesson in the roots of rock and roll. He was showing the world that the Saturday night sinner and the Sunday morning saint were one and the same. By putting this segment in the heart of his comeback, he was grounding his rock and roll rebellion in something deep and soulful. He wasn't just shaking his hips, he was shaking your soul. Number 19 was Love Me Tender, a joke. During one of the stand-up solo performances, Elvis, dressed in the iconic black leather, leans into the microphone. He starts to sing Love Me Tender, his classic ballad from his first movie in 1956. It's supposed to be a tender, romantic moment. But it isn't. He can't get through it. He keeps laughing. He messes up the words. He starts playfully interacting with the women in the front row, reaching out to kiss one of them. The performance dissolves into a charming, chaotic mess. To a casual viewer, it might look like he's making fun of the song. It might seem unprofessional, but it was actually a brilliant piece of stagecraft, whether intentional or not. After years of singing schmaltzy, meaningless songs in bad movies, Love Me Tender had become a symbol of the romantic, safe Elvis that his manager in Hollywood wanted him to be. By fumbling it, by laughing his way through it, he was symbolically killing that version of himself. He was breaking the spell. The audience's reaction is key. They love it. They're screaming and laughing along with him. They're not disappointed that he's not taking it seriously. They are thrilled to see him being spontaneous and real. For 7 years, they had only seen him on a movie screen, a remote and untouchable image. Now, he was just a few feet away, a human being making mistakes and having fun. This moment of imperfection made him more powerful, not less. It shattered the fourth wall between the star and the audience. There was also a technical reason for his behavior. He was incredibly nervous. This was one of the first times he was standing on a stage, alone, in front of a crowd since 1961. He was using humor as a defense mechanism. He was channeling his nervous energy into playfulness. The laughter was a way to release the tension. You can see it in his eyes. He's both terrified and exhilarated. He's walking a tightrope, and he's inviting the audience to walk it with him. This performance also served to cleanse the palate. It was a lighthearted moment before he launched into the more intense, hard rocking numbers. It showed his versatility. He could be the dangerous rocker, the soulful gospel singer, and the charming entertainer who didn't take himself too seriously, all within the same show. It was a masterclass in performance dynamics. In the end, by deconstructing his own most famous ballad, Elvis was asserting his control. He was saying, this song doesn't own me. I own it. He could choose to sing it straight, or he could choose to tear it apart with laughter. The choice was his. It was a small act of rebellion, but it was a crucial one. It proved that he was no longer a puppet of his own image. He was the one pulling the strings. The man who couldn't sing Love Me Tender seriously was the man who was finally, truly loving what he was doing again. Number 18, Why, was a brand new song, the quietest moment of the show. And amidst all the rock and roll explosions, the gospel shouts, and the leather-clad sneers, there is a moment of profound stillness. Elvis, sitting among the audience for the finale, sings a brand new song called Memories. It's a simple, beautiful ballad filled with nostalgia and a touch of sadness. It was the only completely new song, other than If I Can Dream, written specifically for the special. And it was written by a young, up-and-coming songwriter named Mac Davis. Mac Davis would later become a huge star in his own right, with hits like Baby, Don't Get Hooked on Me. But in 1968, he was a staff writer for Nancy Sinatra's publishing company. The producers of the special were looking for a new song that could serve as a nostalgic look back, a kind of musical scrapbook. They put out a call to various songwriters. Davis submitted Memories. When Elvis heard the demo, he loved it immediately. The song's gentle melody and poignant lyrics struck a chord with him. The placement of the song in the show was deliberate. It comes right before the grand finale of If I Can Dream. After an hour of high energy performance, Memories serves as a moment of quiet reflection. Elvis is not on the main stage. He's sitting on the edge of it in a simple white suit surrounded by fans. The performance is intimate and understated. He's not belting the song out. He's singing it softly, almost conversationally. It feels incredibly personal, as if he's sharing a private thought with the millions watching at home. The song's lyrics, about holding on to precious moments, took on a special meaning in the context of the show. For Elvis, it was a look back at the whirlwind of his early career. For the audience, it was a reflection of their own memories of growing up with his music. It was a shared moment of nostalgia, but it wasn't sad. It was warm and comforting. It was Elvis acknowledging his past without being trapped by it. The recording of Memories was also different from the rest of the special's music. It was arranged by the legendary film composer John Williams long before he became famous for Star Wars and Jaws. The lush string arrangement gives the song a timeless cinematic quality. It feels like the end of a movie, which, in a way, it was. It was the end of the Hollywood chapter of his career. Performing Memories live, surrounded by his adoring fans, was a powerful experience for Elvis. You can see the genuine emotion on his face. He's connecting with them on a level he hadn't been able to through the barrier of a movie screen. It was a song about connection, performed in the most connected way possible. It proved that Elvis didn't need to scream to be powerful. His voice, even in a whisper, could still break your heart. It was a moment of grace and vulnerability that showed the true depth of his artistry. Number 17, did the network censor Elvis's hips? One of the biggest legends about Elvis's early career is that TV host Ed Sullivan ordered the cameras to film him only from the waist up. You know, the same fear was alive and well at NBC in 1968. The network censors were extremely nervous about the show. They remembered the controversy from the 1950s. They were worried about Elvis's lewd and suggestive movements. This was 1968, the era of free love, But primetime television was still very conservative. The network sent a representative, a man ironically named Tom Sarnoff, to oversee the production. His job was to make sure nothing offensive made it to air. He was particularly concerned about the stand-up solo performances where Elvis was alone on stage in a black leather suit. This was where Elvis was at his most raw and physical. The performance of Jailhouse Rock was a major point of contention. Elvis came out and owned the stage. He wasn't just singing the song, he was attacking it. He dropped to his knees, he crawled on the floor, he used the microphone stand as a prop, a dance partner, a weapon. His body was in constant motion. It was pure, unadulterated rock and roll energy. The censors were in a panic. They saw every hip swivel, every leg shake as a direct challenge to their standards of decency. Director Steve Binder had a clever plan. He knew the censors would be watching. So during the taping, he deliberately shot the performance in a way that would give him options in the editing room. He used multiple cameras, getting wide shots, medium shots, and extreme close-ups of Elvis's face. He knew that the close-ups were so powerful, so charismatic, that he could use them to distract from the more controversial full-body movements if he had to. After the taping, the battle began. The censors wanted to cut many of the shots. They complained that his movements were too much. Binder argued back. He insisted that the physicality was essential to the performance. It wasn't gratuitous. It was part of the art. To appease them, he made a few small concessions. He agreed to use a few more of the close-ups than he might have otherwise. But he refused to gut the performance. What aired on December 3rd, 1968 was a masterclass in compromise and clever editing. Yes, there are many intense close-ups of Elvis's face, dripping with sweat, his eyes burning with intensity. But the full body shots are still there. You still see the energy, you still feel the danger. Binder gave the censors just enough to make them feel like they had won, while still preserving the raw power of what Elvis had done on that stage. In the end, the controversy was a ghost from the past. By 1968, the world had changed. The Rolling Stones and the Doors were on the radio. What was shocking in 1956 was now just great rock and roll. The network's fear was a testament to the enduring power of Elvis's image. They were still afraid of him a decade later, and that fear was proof that the king was back. He could still scare the suits, and that was a very good thing. Number 16, who was the woman he sang to? In one of the most famous ad-libbed moments of the sit-down show, Elvis starts singing a raw, bluesy version of One Night. The original 1957 hit was One Night of Sin, a suggestive song that his record label, RCA, forced him to tone down. For the special, he went back to the original, more risque lyrics. As he sings the line, "One night with you is what I'm now praying for," he locks eyes with a woman in the audience and sings it directly to her. The crowd goes wild. That woman was not a random fan. Her name was Susan. She was a paid extra, hired to be part of the audience. The producers wanted to make sure the crowd was lively and responsive, so they hired a few people to fill in the seats and get the energy up. But the connection that happened in that moment was completely real and unscripted. Elvis was feeding off her energy, and she was mesmerized by his. This moment is a perfect example of what made the sit-down sessions so magical. It wasn't a rehearsed concert. It was a jam session. It was unpredictable. Elvis was in charge, calling out songs, telling stories, and reacting to the people in the room. He was a master of working a crowd, and after years of acting opposite co-stars on a closed movie set, he was clearly starved for that live interaction. The performance of One Night is one of the highlights of the entire special. It's gritty and real. His voice is rough and full of bluesy phrasing. He's not trying to sound like his old records. He's reinterpreting the song for a new era. The decision to use the original Sin lyrics was another act of rebellion. It was him reclaiming the edgier side of his music, the side that had been sanitized during his Hollywood years. The interaction with Susan was more than just a flirtatious moment. It was a demonstration of his charisma. He had the ability to make every single person in a room feel like he was singing just for them. Even on a television screen, that power was palpable. It's the difference between a singer and a star. A singer performs a song, a star creates a moment. Interestingly, for years after the special aired, many women claimed to be the girl from one night. It became a part of the Elvis mythology. The real Susan rarely spoke about it publicly. For her, it was a brief, incredible moment in her life. For the millions watching, it was a moment that perfectly captured the raw, spontaneous, and dangerously charming Elvis that the world had been missing for so long. Proved he hadn't lost an ounce of his magnetic appeal. Number 15. Why did he open with a threat? The very first word Elvis sings in the special is trouble. The full line, delivered with a defiant sneer, is if you're looking for trouble, you came to the right place. It was an audacious way to reintroduce himself to America after a long absence. He wasn't saying hello. He was issuing a challenge. The song, originally from his 1958 film King Creole, was the perfect statement of intent. He was announcing that the safe, friendly movie star was gone and the rebellious rocker was back. The choice of trouble was deliberate. The song's lyrics are a declaration of independence and a warning. I was born standing up and talking back. My daddy was a green-eyed mountain jack. It's a song about being an outsider, a fighter, someone who doesn't follow the rules. This was the image Elvis and director Steve Binder wanted to project from the very first second of the show. They were throwing down the gauntlet to the audience, to the critics, and to the music industry that had written him off. The performance is electrifying. It's not just the song itself, but the way he delivers it. He's a coiled spring of energy. The arrangement is muscular and loud, driven by a pounding beat and blasting horns. It's a world away from the lightweight soundtracks he had been recording. This was rock and roll with a capital R. The staging, with Elvis surrounded by a gang of dancers, adds to the confrontational atmosphere. It feels like a scene from West Side Story, a street fight set to music. This opening number immediately shattered any expectations that this was going to be a cozy, nostalgic trip down memory lane. This was not a museum piece. This was live, dangerous, and happening right now. For viewers who only knew Elvis from his recent movies, it must have been a shock. The guy who sang Doe the Clam was now snarling about being an evil-minded man. The song also served as a message to his own manager, Colonel Parker. The entire special was a battle between Binder's vision of a raw, relevant Elvis and the Colonel's vision of a safe family entertainer. By opening with Trouble, Elvis was publicly siding with Binder. He was embracing the danger, the very thing the Colonel had tried to suppress for years. It was his declaration of artistic freedom. Starting a comeback show with a song that isn't one of your biggest hits is a risk. They could have opened with Hound Dog or Jailhouse Rock, but opening with Trouble was a more powerful statement. It wasn't about reminding people of who he was, it was about telling them who he was now. He was 33 years old, no longer a kid, but a man who had been through the Hollywood machine and come out the other side ready to fight. The first song of his comeback wasn't a plea for acceptance. It was a warning, and it was thrilling. Number 14 was Blue Suede Shoes, a tribute or a takeover. During the sit-down jam session, one of the first full songs the band launches into is Blue Suede Shoes. It's a song forever associated with Elvis, but it wasn't his song. It was written and first recorded by his friend and fellow Sun Records artist Carl Perkins. And Elvis's version became a bigger hit, which was a source of some tension between the two artists in the early days. By 1968, that was ancient history. His performance of the song in the special feels less like a cover and more like a complete reclamation. What's fascinating about this version is how different it is from his 1956 recording. The original was tight, polished, and produced for a pop audience. The 68 version is loose, raw, and absolutely blistering. It's pure, uncut rockabilly. Elvis is not just singing the song, he's attacking his electric guitar. Many people forget that Elvis was a fantastic rhythm guitarist. His playing was the engine that drove his early sound. In the special, you can see that talent on full display. He's not just strumming, he's driving the band with his aggressive, percussive playing. The interplay between Elvis and Scotty Moore is incredible. Scotty, the master of the concise, perfect guitar solo, is on fire. He plays with a ferocity that matches Elvis's own. DJ Fontana is hammering away on a guitar case, providing a primitive, powerful beat. This is the sound of a garage band, not a polished superstar act. It's the sound of three guys in a room, pushing each other, having the time of their lives. Elvis ad-libs throughout the song. He talks to the band, laughs, and eggs them on. At one point, he messes up a line and just grins, never losing the beat. This spontaneity is what makes the performance feel so alive. He's not just recreating a hit, he's reinventing it in the moment. He's showing the audience the process of making music, the joy of spontaneous creation. By performing Blue Suede Shoes with such passion, Elvis was also paying tribute to his roots. He was acknowledging the Sun Records sound, the rockabilly fire that started it all. He was honoring Carl Perkins, Sam Phillips, and all the pioneers who created this music with him. It was a nod to his past, but it wasn't nostalgia. It was a demonstration that this music was still vital, still powerful, and still coursed through his veins. In a way, this performance was the thesis statement for the entire sit-down segment. It was about stripping away the Hollywood gloss and getting back to the basics: a man, a guitar, and a great song. It proved that the fire that had changed the world in 1956 wasn't out. It had just been waiting for a chance to burn again. And with Blue Suede Shoes, Elvis struck the match. Number 13. How did he turn heartbreak into a weapon? Heartbreak Hotel was Elvis's first national #1 hit in 1956. It was a strange, haunting song, unlike anything else on the radio. It was slow, bluesy, and full of dark imagery. For his comeback, he could have played it safe and recreated the original. He didn't. He transformed it into something new and menacing. In the sit-down portion, he introduces the song with a story. He talks about how people laughed at it when he first recorded it. He says, it's a sad song. Then he launches into it, and it's not sad. It's angry. The tempo is faster. His voice is raw and full of grit. He's not the lonely boy of the original recording. He's a man who has lived through some things, and he's not happy about it. The most dramatic performance of the song comes during the solo stand-up segment. Dressed in black leather, standing alone on the stage, he delivers a version that is pure physical threat. He uses the microphone and its stand as a prop, strangling it, caressing it, pointing it like a weapon. The performance is incredibly theatrical. He drops to the floor, crawling, his body contorting with the music. It's not a song about sadness anymore. It's a song about despair turning into rage. This reinterpretation was a radical act. He was taking his own history and twisting it. He was showing the audience that these old songs were not relics. They were living things that could be changed and reimagined. He was demonstrating his growth as an artist. The boy who sang Heartbreak Hotel was full of youthful angst. The man who sang it in 1968 was full of adult experience. The musical arrangement reflected this change. The band is tight and aggressive. The guitars are sharp. The drums are heavy. It's a hard rock version of a blues ballad. This willingness to experiment with his own classics was one of the most exciting things about the special. He wasn't afraid to take risks, to tear down his own monuments and rebuild them in a new image. The performance was also a showcase for his incredible vocal power. By 1968, his voice had matured. It was deeper, richer, and more controlled than it had been in the 50s. He could go from a whisper to a scream in a heartbeat. On Heartbreak Hotel, he uses every tool in his vocal arsenal. He croons, he shouts, he growls. It's a masterful performance that proves he was a far better singer than many of his critics gave him credit for. He wasn't just a pop star. He was one of the great vocalists of the 20th century, and on that stage, he made sure everyone knew it. Number 12, why did a silly ad-lib become so famous? During the sit-down show, in the middle of a powerful version of Are You Lonesome Tonight, Elvis starts laughing. He's in the middle of the spoken word bridge, a part of the song that is famously sentimental and dramatic. He sees a woman in the front row who is mouthing the words along with him, and it completely breaks his concentration. He tries to regain his composure, but he can't. He dissolves into laughter, at one point snorting and covering his face. The band keeps playing, and he eventually manages to finish the song, but the moment is completely derailed. This mistake should have been edited out. It was unprofessional, it ruined a classic song, but director Steve Binder made the brilliant decision to leave it in. He understood that this moment of spontaneous, genuine humor was more valuable than a perfect performance. It was a glimpse of the real Elvis, the guy who loved to joke around, the guy who didn't take himself too seriously. The Lahing version of Are You Lonesome Tonight became one of the most beloved moments of the special. It was even released as a single years later and became a hit. Why? Because it was human. So for years, Elvis had been a carefully controlled image on a movie screen. He was always perfect, always handsome, always saying the right lines. This moment shattered that illusion. It showed him making a mistake, being vulnerable, and being utterly charming about it. It also showcased his incredible connection with his audience. He wasn't performing at them. He was performing with them. The fact that a fan's silly expression could make him break character shows how present he was in that room. He was paying attention. He was connected. That connection is what had been missing from his career for so long. The moment also highlights the high-wire act of the sit-down sessions. There was no script. There was no safety net. Anything could happen, and it did. That element of danger and unpredictability is what made it so exciting. It was live television in the truest sense of the word. For Elvis, it was also a moment of release. You can see the relief on his face. After years of being under pressure to be perfect, the freedom to just mess up and laugh about it must have been incredible. It's the sound of a man who is finally enjoying his job again, and that joy was infectious. People didn't love the performance despite the mistake. They loved it because of the mistake. It was a perfect imperfection that proved he was more than just a king. He was a human being. And number 11 was A Little Less Conversation, a flop. Most people today know A Little Less Conversation from the hit remix that was featured in the 2001 movie Ocean's 11. It's a funky, energetic track that sounds incredibly modern. But the original version was recorded for the 1968 special, and it has a very different story. It was written by Mac Davis, the same writer who penned Memories, and it was originally intended for a very specific and ultimately scrapped part of the show. The song was part of a production number that was meant to be a parody of the political and social protests of the time. The concept was a bit vague and not very well thought out. Elvis would be portrayed as a kind of guru or leader surrounded by followers. The scene was filmed, but it just didn't work. It felt forced and awkward. Director Steve Binder and Elvis both knew it was a weak link in the show, so they cut the entire segment. This meant that A Little Less Conversation was not featured in the final broadcast of the special. It was recorded, filmed, but left on the cutting room floor. The song was instead used in the soundtrack for one of his last movies, Live a Little, Love a Little. It was released as a single, but failed to make a significant impact on the charts. It was essentially a forgotten track, a casualty of the creative process, but the song itself was fantastic. It was a departure for Elvis. It was funky with a driving bass line and a horn section that was pure soul music. It showed a direction he could have gone in, a more R&B influenced sound. His vocal performance is sharp and full of attitude. He's clearly having fun with the song's playful, demanding lyrics. The story of A Little Less Conversation is a testament to the high standards of the special. A song that good, a performance that energetic, was still not considered good enough to make the final cut. That's how much incredible material they had to work with. They were willing to sacrifice a great track to maintain the overall quality and flow of the show. Years later, when the outtakes from the special were released, fans finally got to see the performance. And in 2002, Dutch DJ Junkie, the 40th, discovered the track and remixed it. The new version, with its modern electronic beat, became a massive global hit, reaching #1 in over 20 countries. It introduced a whole new generation to Elvis's music. The song's journey from a forgotten outtake to a worldwide smash hit is one of the strangest in music history. It proves that the quality of the music being made for the '68 special was incredibly high. Even the songs that weren't used were gems waiting to be discovered. It's a powerful reminder that Elvis in 1968 wasn't just rehashing his past. He was creating music that was years ahead of its time. Number 10, How Did a Blues Standard Become a Biography? Lottie Miss Claudie was a classic rhythm and blues song, a huge hit for Lloyd Price in 1952. Elvis had recorded his own version in 1956. It was a staple of his early live shows. When he plays it during the sit-down segment of the special, it feels like more than just another old hit. It feels like he's telling his own story. He starts the song and then abruptly stops the band. He turns to the audience and says, "I've been gone a long time." He smiles, but there's a world of meaning in that simple sentence. It's an apology, an explanation, and a promise, all in one. Then he launches back into the song with a renewed intensity. The performance that follows is a masterclass in blues singing and storytelling. His piano playing on the track is a revelation. Many people don't know that Elvis was a competent pianist. He plays with a rollicking barrelhouse style that is pure New Orleans R&B. He's not just playing chords, he's driving the song from the keyboard. His hands are a blur. It's another example of him revealing a hidden talent, a skill that had been buried during the movie years. But it's the lyrics that take on a new meaning. The song is a plea from a man to his girl, begging her not to leave him. But in the context of 1968, it sounds like Elvis is singing to his audience, to his own career. "Please don't excite me, baby. You know I can't be good. So bye, 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 baby girl. I won't be back no more." He sings the lines with a mix of defiance and vulnerability. It's as if he's addressing his own long absence, acknowledging the risk he's taking by coming back. The musical conversation between the band members is incredible. Scotty Moore's guitar licks answer Elvis's vocal lines. DJ Fontana's simple, powerful beat holds it all together. They are reading each other's minds, reacting in real time. This is what was missing from the sterile movie soundtracks. This is the sound of live, collaborative creation. By choosing to perform this deep blues cut, Elvis was once again connecting with his musical roots. He was reminding people that before he was a movie star, he was a white kid from Mississippi who fell in love with black music. That music was the foundation of everything he did. The performance of Lottie Miss Claudie was a powerful statement of authenticity. It was him saying, "This is who I am. This is where I come from." It wasn't just a song. It was a confession and a declaration of his identity. Number 9 was Can't Help Falling in Love with Surrender. For years, Can't Help Falling in Love was the song Elvis used to close his live concerts. It was his signature ballad, the gentle goodnight kiss to his audience. In the special, however, it's not the final song. It appears in the middle of one of the stand-up segments, and the performance is anything but gentle. He begins the song in the traditional tender way. His voice is soft and beautiful. But as the song builds, so does the intensity. The arrangement becomes more powerful, with the drums kicking in and the orchestra swelling. By the final verse, he is no longer crooning. He is belting the lyrics with a passion and power that is almost shocking. He hits a final soaring high note that hangs in the air, a demonstration of his incredible vocal range and control. This performance is a complete reimagining of the song. It's no longer a lullaby. It's a dramatic, almost desperate declaration of love. The context is everything. He's not singing it to a lover. He's singing it to his audience. He's singing it about music itself. After years of being forced to sing songs he didn't believe in, this performance is him recommitting himself to his art. "Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you." It's a vow. The physicality of the performance is also key. He's in the black leather, standing alone, a single spotlight on him. He's not the charming movie star. He's a solitary, intense figure. He's pouring all of his frustration, all of his hope, all of his years of pent-up creative energy into this one song. It's a moment of complete emotional surrender. By placing this song In the middle of the show, he's also subverting expectations. People expected it at the end. By delivering this supercharged version early on, he's telling them that this show is not going to follow the old rules. Anything can happen. This performance proves that Elvis was not just a rock and roll shouter. He was a masterful ballad singer, capable of wringing every ounce of emotion from a lyric. He could be tender and he could be explosive, sometimes within the same song. It's a moment of breathtaking artistry that often gets overlooked in a special full of more famous, high-energy numbers. But it's one of the clear signs that Elvis was back, not just as an entertainer, but as a serious and profound artist. It wasn't a surrender, it was a passionate reclamation of his most famous love song. Number 8. Why were the backup singers so important? Behind Elvis on many of the production numbers and in the gospel segment was a group of 4 incredibly talented female singers. They were called the Blossoms. Their leader was Darlene Love, a powerhouse vocalist who would later be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In 1968, they were one of the most in-demand session groups in Los Angeles, having sung on hits for everyone from Frank Sinatra to the Beach Boys. But their role in the Elvis special was more than just singing oohs and ahs. Director Steve Binder knew he needed a vocal group that could keep up with Elvis and even push him. The Blossoms were perfect. They were not timid background singers. They were stars in their own right. Their powerful gospel-trained voices provided the perfect counterpoint to Elvis's own. They were not just supporting him, they were dueting with him. The gospel medley is the clearest example of their importance. When the music kicks into high gear on Up Above My Head and Saved, it's a full-on vocal battle between Elvis and the Blossoms. He sings a line and they answer with a blistering harmony. They are shouting, clapping, and dancing right along with him. Their energy is a huge part of what makes that segment so explosive. Darlene Love, in particular, has a voice that can match Elvis's for sheer power, and you can hear him feeding off her energy. But their contribution wasn't limited to the gospel songs. They provided the soulful backing on the Gitterman numbers and added a layer of vocal richness to the entire show. Their presence also made a subtle but important statement. In an era of deep racial tension, here was a white singer from Mississippi sharing the stage and the spotlight with a group of black women, creating a joyful, powerful sound together. It was a visual and sonic representation of the integrated roots of rock and roll. There's a great story from the rehearsals. Elvis was a huge fan of Darlene Love's work with producer Phil Spector. He kept asking her to sing her hit, "Today I Met the Boy I'm Gonna Marry." She was hesitant, not wanting to take the spotlight from him. But he insisted. In the middle of his own comeback rehearsal, he stopped everything to listen to her sing. It was a sign of his deep respect for her talent and his genuine love of music. Without the Blossoms, the special would have been a very different show. They were not just backup singers. They were essential collaborators. They provided the soul, the power, and the joy that helped elevate the music to another level. They were the secret weapon that proved Elvis was not just a solo act, but a man who knew he was at his best when surrounded by great musicians. Number 7, did the Colonel sabotage the show from the inside? Colonel Tom Parker's official title was manager, but he controlled every aspect of Elvis's life and career. He was a brilliant promoter, but he was also incredibly conservative when it came to Elvis's image. He hated risk. His plan for the 1968 TV special was simple and safe. Elvis in a tuxedo singing 20 Christmas songs with a big Merry Christmas from Singer at the end. It would have been a ratings disaster and the final nail in the coffin of Elvis's credibility. The show's young director Steve Binder had a radically different vision. He wanted to create a raw, exciting show that would remind people of the rebellious Elvis of the 1950s. The entire production was a constant battle between these two opposing forces. The Colonel fought Binder on almost every major creative decision. He hated the idea of the informal sit-down jam session. He thought it looked cheap and unprofessional. He famously said, "It looks like a bunch of guys in a whorehouse." He wanted a slick, polished production. Binder knew that the jam session was the key to unlocking the real Elvis, to making him feel comfortable and spontaneous. Binder won that fight and it became the heart of the show. The Colonel hated the black leather suit. He wanted the tuxedo. He thought the leather was too thuggish. Binder and costume designer Bill Ballou knew it was the perfect symbol for Elvis's return to his rock and roll roots. They won that fight too. He hated the bordello scene in the Guitar Man number. He was terrified it would offend the sponsor and the conservative TV audience. Binder argued it was essential to the story of a young artist navigating the temptations of fame. He won, barely. And most famously, the Colonel hated If I Can Dream. He was furious that Binder and Elvis were ditching his planned I'll Be Home for Christmas finale for this new political song. He threatened to pull the plug on the whole show. He only backed down when he realized Elvis was fully committed to the new song. The Colonel's attempts to control the show were not just about creative differences, they were about fear. He was afraid of losing control of his star client. For years, Elvis had done exactly what he was told. The special was the first time Elvis truly pushed back and asserted his own artistic vision. The Colonel saw Steve Binder as a threat, someone who was encouraging Elvis to be independent. In a way, the Colonel's constant opposition was a blessing in disguise. It forced Binder and Elvis to fight for their ideas. It made them more determined to create something great. The tension and conflict behind the scenes fueled the energy and defiance that you see on the screen. The show is not just a comeback. It's a revolution. It's the story of an artist breaking free from his manager's golden cage. And every song is a blow against the bars. Number 6, what was the music they didn't use? The 68 special is famous for the music that made it to air, but the rehearsal and taping sessions generated hours and hours of incredible material that was left on the cutting room floor. These outtakes, released over the years on various albums and box sets, paint an even richer picture of Elvis's musical mindset in 1968. They show an artist with an encyclopedic knowledge of music, capable of playing almost any song in any style. During the sit-down jam sessions, in between the famous takes of Heartbreak Hotel and Blue Suede Shoes, Elvis and the band played a huge variety of other songs. They riffed on classic blues numbers like Jimmy Reed's Baby, What You Want Me to Do, and Big Boss Man. These weren't polished performances, they were loose, spontaneous jams. Elvis's voice on these blues tracks is raw and authentic. He's not imitating a blues singer, he is one. He also played a number of his more obscure 50s tracks, songs that weren't big hits but were personal favorites like That's When Your Heartaches Begin and I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. These performances are intimate and heartfelt, a glimpse into the quieter, more vulnerable side of the artist. Most surprisingly, he also played contemporary songs. There's a fascinating rehearsal recording of him singing a bit of the Bee Gees hit Words. It shows that he was listening to the radio, that he was aware of the music that was happening around him. He wasn't stuck in the past. The rehearsals for the big production numbers also yielded some forgotten gems. There are multiple takes of Gitter Man and Trouble, each with a slightly different feel. There are also instrumental tracks and vocal warm-ups that show the incredible professionalism of the studio musicians and backup singers. One of the most interesting outtakes is a full stand-up performance of Blue Suede Shoes in the black leather suit. In the final broadcast, the song is only featured in the sit-down segment. But he also performed a blistering, high-energy solo version that was just as good, if not better. The editors simply had too much great material to choose from. Listening to these outtakes is like being a fly on the wall at one of the greatest moments in music history. You can hear the chatter between songs, the jokes, the false starts, the moments of pure, unscripted magic. And it proves that what we see in the final 1 hour special was just the tip of the iceberg. For a few weeks in June of 1968, Elvis Presley was the best musician on the planet, and thankfully the tapes were rolling. Number 5, how did he sing a dozen songs in a row? The solo stand-up segments of the special are a physical and vocal marathon. Elvis is alone on a small square stage surrounded by the audience. There's no band visible, he's singing to pre-recorded instrumental tracks, a common practice for television at the time. This meant he had no live band to feed off of. All the energy had to come from him, and he delivered, in spades. He performed 2 of these arena-style shows, one at 6 p.m. and one at 8 p.m. on June 29th, 1968. For each show, he performed a blistering set of his greatest hits, including Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, All Shook Up, Can't Help Falling in Love, and Jailhouse Rock. The pace is relentless. He barely pauses between songs. It's a non-stop explosion of energy. The vocal performance is astonishing. He sings every song in its original key. His voice is powerful, clear, and full of emotion. He's not coasting or saving his energy. He gives 100% on every single line. This was after years of recording bland movie soundtracks, a process that required little vocal effort. His ability to step back into the role of a rock and roll frontman and deliver a performance of this intensity is a testament to his natural talent and his dedication to getting back in shape for this show. The physical performance is just as demanding. He is in constant motion. The black leather suit is hot and restrictive. He's sweating profusely under the television lights, yet he never stops moving. The choreography is a mix of his classic 50s moves and a new, more aggressive style. He's using his whole body to sell the songs. It's an athletic performance as much as a musical one. What's incredible is that he did this twice in one night. After the grueling 6 p.m. show, he had a short break and then had to go out and do it all over again for the 8 p.m. taping. The producers needed 2 full performances to have enough footage and camera angles to edit together the final version. This feat of stamina and vocal power silenced anyone who thought Elvis had gone soft in Hollywood. He proved that he was one of the greatest live performers in the world. He didn't just have charisma, he had the vocal chops and the physical endurance to back it up. It was a stunning display of power and professionalism that left no doubt that the king was not just back, but stronger than ever. Number 4, who wrote the words that became his mantra. The show was officially titled Singer Presents Elvis. The name, the 68 Comeback Special, was coined by fans and critics years later. But the show's musical and narrative theme was provided by a song that was over a decade old, Guitar Man. The lyrics, written by the brilliant Jerry Reed, perfectly encapsulated Elvis's own journey. The song tells the story of a young musician with nothing but a guitar, hitchhiking from town to town, trying to make it. I've got a gut string tuned up tight. I can't stand to see a good man cry. I'm gonna play that thing all night for the folks down in my town. It's a story of struggle, dedication, and the simple love of playing music. Director Steve Binder heard this song and realized it was the key to the whole special. It was a metaphor for Elvis's escape from the gilded prison of Hollywood and his return to his authentic musical self. The entire show is framed by the Guitar Man story. It opens with the Trouble Guitar Man medley, which shows the young musician's rise to fame. It reappears in the middle with a road segment showing him on his journey, and it's there at the end as he stands triumphant. The song's lyrics became a kind of mission statement for Elvis. So if you're ever in the town and you hear a funky sound and you see a man with a guitar in his hand, that's me, the Guitar Man. It was a reassertion of his identity. He wasn't a race car driver, a cowboy, or a pineapple tycoon. He was a guitar man. That's who he had always been. The decision to make Jerry Reed's song the backbone of the show was a stroke of genius. It gave the special a narrative thread, a story that audiences could follow. It was more than just a collection of hits. It was a musical drama with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And by having Jerry Reed himself play on the new recording, Elvis was paying his respects to the source. He was acknowledging the songwriter, the creator. It was a sign of his musical maturity. In the 50s, he was a kid singing songs. In 1968, he was an artist interpreting them, understanding their deeper meaning, and using them to tell his own story. The words of the Guitar Man were not originally his, but by the end of the special, he owned them completely. They were his truth. Number 3 was he saying goodbye to the movies. The entire 68 special can be seen as a symbolic rejection of Elvis's movie career. The raw, unscripted energy of the sit-down sessions was the complete opposite of the stiff, formulaic performances in his films. The dangerous sexual energy of the stand-up numbers was a world away from the wholesome, family-friendly characters he played. But there was one moment that seemed to be a direct and deliberate farewell to Hollywood. It's the Bordello scene, which is part of the larger Guitar Man production number. Elvis, as the young musician, finds himself in a saloon or dance hall, surrounded by scantily clad women. The scene is choreographed to an instrumental version of his movie song, It Hurts Me. The dancers are trying to seduce him, to distract him from his music. He resists them, pushes them away, and escapes, grabbing his guitar as he leaves. The message is unmistakable. The women represent the temptations and distractions of fame, the empty glamour of Hollywood that had trapped him for so long. His guitar represents his authentic self, his art. The scene is a drama of him choosing his music over the shallow allure of stardom. It's him literally walking away from the world that had nearly destroyed his creativity. The network censors and Colonel Parker were, of course, horrified by this scene. A bordello on primetime television in 1968 was a huge taboo, but director Steve Binder fought for it. He knew it was a crucial piece of storytelling. It was the climax of the Guitar Man narrative. It was the moment the hero rejects the false world and rededicates himself to his true calling. The use of the song It Hurts Me is also significant. It's a powerful, emotional ballad from 1964, one of the few genuinely great songs he recorded during his movie years. Using it in this context gives it a new, poignant meaning. It's not just about a romantic breakup, it's about the pain of being creatively stifled. It hurts me to see you with someone new. It hurts me to know you're not true. He could have been singing those words to his own muse. This scene was his declaration of independence. He was no longer going to be the clean-cut hero of a dozen bad musicals. He was a serious artist, and he was taking back control of his career. The special was not just a comeback, it was an escape. And this scene was him blowing a hole in the wall of his prison. Number 2, what did the ratings actually prove? On the night of December 3rd, 1968, the special aired on NBC. Everyone involved was incredibly nervous. They had fought the Colonel, they had fought the network, they had taken huge creative risks. Now, it was up to the American public to decide if it had all been worth it. The stakes could not have been higher. If the show failed, Elvis's career as a relevant artist would be over. The show was a monster hit. It was the highest rated television program of the week. It captured an incredible 42% of the total viewing audience. To put that in perspective, in today's fragmented media landscape, a show getting even 10% of the audience is considered a massive success. In 1968, 42% meant that nearly half of all the people in America watching television that night were watching Elvis. This was a stunning victory. It proved that Elvis Presley was still a massive star with a connection to the public that had not been broken by years of bad movies. It proved that people were hungry to see the real Elvis, the musician, the performer. The critics, who had largely written him off, were equally enthusiastic. The reviews were glowing. They praised his performance, his energy, his voice. They hailed it as a triumphant return to form. The commercial success of the special had immediate and profound consequences for his career. It gave him the confidence to stop making movies and return to live performing. The success of this soundtrack album, which reached the top 10, proved that he could still sell records. The hit single, If I Can Dream, his first top 20 hit in years, proved he could still be a force on the radio. The ratings proved Steve Binder's vision had been correct. A raw, honest, and risky show was exactly what the public wanted. It proved Elvis's instincts had been right. By trusting his gut and fighting for the music he believed in, he had reconnected with his audience on a massive scale. But most importantly, the ratings gave Elvis leverage over his own manager. Colonel Parker could no longer argue for the safe, boring path. The success of the special was undeniable proof that danger, rebellion, and artistic integrity were not just good for the soul, they were good for business. The 42% was more than just a number. It was a mandate. It was the American public telling Elvis, this is the man we want you to be. And for the next few years, he listened. Number 1, was it a comeback or a rebirth? Calling the 68 special a comeback is accurate in a way. Elvis had been absent from the live stage for 7 years. His musical career was in a critical state. So he was, in a literal sense, coming back. But the word comeback doesn't quite capture the profound transformation that took place. A comeback implies returning to a previous state. Elvis didn't just go back to being the king of the 50s. He became something new. This was a rebirth. The special was not about nostalgia. It was a complete reinvention. He took his old songs and infused them with a new maturity and power. He sang new songs that addressed the turmoil of the modern world. He showcased a vocal and physical power that was even greater than it had been in his youth. He wasn't the boy who had left the stage in 1961. He was a man, a seasoned artist at the absolute peak of his powers. Every detail, every song choice, every ad-lib pointed to this transformation. The raw energy of the sit-down sessions showed he was still a groundbreaking musician. The theatrical power of the stand-up numbers proved he was a peerless performer. The soulful depth of the gospel medley revealed the spiritual foundation of his art. The political courage of If I Can Dream announced his arrival as a contemporary artist with something to say. The special changed everything. It directly led to his legendary recording sessions in Memphis in 1969, which produced hits like Suspicious Minds and In the Ghetto. It launched his triumphant return to live concert performances in Las Vegas, where he redefined the rock and roll residency. It kicked off a second act of his career that, for a time, was just as brilliant and influential as his first. The 24 details of these songs are not just trivia. They are the building blocks of a masterpiece. They are the evidence of an artist fighting for his soul and winning. The 68 special proved that Elvis Presley was not a relic. He was not a nostalgia act. He was not just the king of what was. On that stage, in that leather suit, he proved he was still the king of what is. He wasn't just coming back. He was being born again in a blaze of sweat, leather, and glorious rock and roll.